Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge, an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else while I try and drag this whole mental health thing back where it's supposed to be. Now, I should explain myself a little bit. I have been on a hiatus for several weeks, and it just happened to be kind of because of a shitstorm of random situations that popped up. First off, it has been ungodly hot in New York the last month, like in the 90s with the humidity between the 80 and 90% mark, and my room gets extremely hot, as one might suggest, with a dual PC setup. So it's like I'm constantly running fans and my door is open and I can't record while doing that. So if I record, I have to shut the door, I have to turn all the fans off. It gets very hot in this room very fast. Next, I was super busy in the lead up to my vacation, and then I was on vacation. So I was working a ton of extra hours to just get to a point where I felt comfortable going on vacation. And then while I was on vacation, I didn't have access to really anything to record anything on. And again, I was on vacation. I didn't want to have to think about anything. So this is my formal I'm sorry I kind of disappeared for like a month. But that said, I tend to work myself to the bone and then have to take a break because I just don't have enough time in the day to fit everything in. So that's kind of where I've been the last month. I have done some things with Magic, but for the most part, I haven't really had the time to play. And I'm hoping to change that moving forward. I have the Commander Sealed charity event coming up in September, so I'm excited for that. But for the most part, I just want to play Magic again. I would like to, I've been in the brewing mentality, and I need I need to put some fresh decks together and just go sling them at FNM. I have a few in the tank that I've been thinking about. I've got a few that I put together recently that I just haven't had the chance to really play. I'm actually hoping to sit down with my cousin and some friends and jam some games with decks that I put together. Yeah, I should actually talk to him about that. But that said, things I have on the burner right now, I finally got my hands on the Bant precon from Final Fantasy. I'm going to be talking about that later because I did some minor updates to that. I don't know what you would consider minor. This is more, I think I swapped out a bunch of tap lands for things that either come in tapped or have the potential to come in untapped. And I think 15 cards in total. I've been working on Choco because I had already been thinking about birds, and now I have more birds with chocobos. Another thing I've been thinking about, I pulled the Dion Bahamut's Dominant as a promo in one of my games, one of my pre-releases. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. And I had the idea to do a thing with 30 Templar Knights. Those are the guys that are 1 and a white, Human Knight, 3/1, Vigilance. You can pay a white, tap 5 of the untapped attacking creatures you control named Templar Knight. Search your library for a legendary artifact card, put it on the battlefield, and shuffle. And I've just ordered most of the Templar Knights. I think I have 5. And I just ordered another 20. And I'm still debating whether I want to actually bump that up by 5 to get up to 25 or not. But I'm going to play this version. There's also some legendary artifacts that I did not order because they're freaking expensive. I'm looking at things like Mox Hamber, which is still a $50 card. I'm looking at things like the One Ring, which is still like an $80 card. And I might proxy them until I decide I want to actually, like, pull the trigger on everything. That said, even if this deck doesn't play like I want to the first couple of times, I like this idea enough that I'm going to stick with it until it actually works. That said, I've been brewing. I've been tinkering. I've been going through boxes of cards and being like, oh, I have this. Did I have an idea for that? And so just, the brewer mind doing what the brewer mind does. I will say this. It's easy to brew like monocolor decks because I don't have to worry about where the lands are going to come from. Because if I'm being completely honest, this is probably just going to run 37 planes. But I think that's like a pretty good explanation of where the hell I've been the last month. And I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I'm going to talk about that Bant Titus Yuna's Guardian deck. And yes, I have been calling him Titus since like 2006. I won't be changing now. I'll be right back. And we're back. Now, I do want to talk about that Bant Titus Yuna's Guardian deck, but a little different from what I normally do, which is where I'll pull like a selection of cards I want to touch on and why they're in the deck. Because there's a lot of cards I just want to talk about because of the art that they're using. But I also want to talk about, all of the companions that are in the deck, some of the other creatures that have gotten cards in the deck, and then I also want to touch on a lot of the cards that I added. And that's actually where I'm going to start. So, I'm not going to talk about the fact that I cut X amount of non-basics and put in more basics. Nobody wants to hear about that. Instead, you want to hear the fact that I just had a Misty Rainforest sitting on my desk not doing anything, so I threw it into this deck. That said, the other non-basic lands that I added to this deck are Xanarkand, Ancient Metropolis. I just happened to pull a foil, so I decided to throw it in here. And that has the Adventure Lasting Faith for 4 green. Create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each land you control. Does it thematically make sense with this deck? No. But it's cool, so I threw it in there. I also pulled a foil Capital City, and it's a filter land that has cycling, so I figured why not. But that said, as far as non-lands go, I believe I've added 15. So I'm going to go through those relatively quickly so that this doesn't end up being like a 45-minute episode. I have Shadowbringers, which is one of the changed art cards. This is a Dovin's Veto. It's a white and a blue. Instant spell can't be countered. Counter a non-creature spell. Pre-season wanderings, 2 and a green for an instant. Search your library for a basic land card or town. Put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. If you search a library this way, you put a counter on a creature you control. Roamer's routine is 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. It has harmonize for 4 and a green. I added a chromatic lantern, 3 mana artifact, land you control, half tap, add 1 mana of any color, and it taps for 1 mana of any color. I added Herd Heirloom, which is 1 and a green for an artifact. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. And you can tap it until end of turn, target creature you control with power 4 or greater gains trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And I think that basically does it for like added ramp that I wanted. I added a Heliod Suncrowned, 2 and a white, 5/5, God, indestructible. Devotion to white is less than 5. Heliod isn't a creature, and whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. 1 and a white, another target creature gains lifelink till end of turn. There was already a Walking Ballista in the set. I'm not talking about it, but it had some fun art. So this just kind of goes infinite with that, which is technically a second infinite combo in the deck, because the deck came with one. Regardless. Luxton Battle Priest is 4 and a white for a 3/5 Elephant Cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. Rosa, Resolute White Mage, is 3 and a green, or 3 and a white for a 2/3 Human Noble Cleric, has reach. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, play a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains lifelink until end of turn. Kellen Joins Up is Bant for a legendary enchantment. When Kellen Joins Up enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. And whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Bovine Intervention, 1 and a white, instant. Destroy target artifact or creature. Its controller makes a 2/2 white ox creature token. Summon Fenrir, 2 and a green for a Saga Summon, Saga Wolf. Its first step is Crescent Fang. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Its second is Heavenward Howl. When you cast your next creature spell this turn, that creature enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And its third step is Ecliptic Growl. Draw a card if you control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. Next up, we have Norn's Choirmaster, 3 white for a 5/4 Phyrexian Angel, flying first strike, and whenever a commander you control enters the battlefield or attacks, proliferate. Synchronized Charge, 1 and a green for a sorcery, distribute 2 1/1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. Creatures you control with counters on them gain vigilance and trample till end of turn. It has Harmonize for 4 and a green. Now for Wrath, Now for Ruin is 3 and a white for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. They gain vigilance until end of turn. The Ring tempts you, which doesn't actually play a big part in this deck. It's just there for the first part. Gnarled Colony is 1 and a green for a 2/2 beast with kicker of 2 and a green. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. But each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. And Wildwood Scourge, X and a green for a 0/0 Hydra. The creature enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. But whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on another non-Hydra creature you control, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So this creature just gets huge as you start shifting counters around. Ooh, okay. So I do want to go over the creatures that are in the deck that represent the characters and side characters from the game. I'm going to do that last. Next up, I want to talk about just some of the art and maybe not go through exactly what each of them does. So first up, I have Farewell. I hate Farewell. I hate this card in general. But the art depicts the end of the game, and this is a spoiler for a game that's been out for, 20 years. At the end of the game, the main character Titus, has to say goodbye because he learns through his journey that he is not real. He is from a dream world. And if they win, he will disappear. And this is that last scene where, right before he disappears, he gives Yuna a hug from behind and says goodbye. Bred for the Hunt depicts Kamari fighting Yankee and Biran on Mount Gagazet. An Offer You Can't Refuse is the beginning of the game where we meet Riku before we know her name is Riku. The Grateful Apparition is the faith that is the faith for Bahamut. Inexorable Tide depicts the beginning of the game, the tutorial basically, of Sin entering Dreams Anarchind to push the start of Titus's journey. Together Forever is the depiction of the kiss that Titus and Yuna share in Macalania Woods. The Command Tower shows Dreams Anarchind. The Forge of Heroes is the Monster Fight Arena. The Fight Rigging depicts when Yuna was kidnapped by the Albed so that the Besaid Aurochs would have to throw their match against the... what's the Albed's name? I think it's the Albed Sykes. It's been a hot minute. I think it's the Albed Sykes. Once you rescue Yuna, they go on to win the game and then have to play against the Goers. The Soul Ring in the set is the save spheres that you have access to. The Arcane Signet is the symbol of the game. It's the symbol that is prominent on Titus's and his father Jex's clothing. And then this one I do have to spend a little more time getting into because I feel like they kind of lost the sauce on this one and it bears being repeated. So Inspiring Call is 2 and a green for an instant. Draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Those creatures gain indestructible till end of turn. This depicts a moment when they are leaving Luca and Titus realizes he's stuck in Spira. He's very dejected. He's, mopey. And Yuna tells him sometimes it's better to just fake the smile until you don't have to anymore. And he says, you mean like fake laughing? And so she says, yes. So they do that. And yes, it is as cringy as you think it is. Again, the game is 20 years old. But the thing is, past that cringe is doing it, they end up laughing for real because it is so ridiculous. So it's just... more people need to realize, yes, it's cringy, but it's cringy because this is a life-changing thing that he's going through. He has no idea if he can even get home anymore. And for Yuna, this is before anybody has explained to Titus what exactly the summoner's journey is. So she's just trying to show him that there is a way to move forward, even if moving forward is painful. Alright, after all of that, are you ready to talk about some characters? Let's talk about the main commander in the deck, which is Titus, Yuna's Guardian. It is Bant, so green, white, blue. For a 3/3 human warrior, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control, and he has the ability Cheer. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn. So it doesn't matter if you hit multiple players, the once per turn thing kind of constricts you to only activating this ability once. But for the most part, this means you want to be playing more creatures, you want to be throwing counters around, and you just want to, go to town. So let's start with one of the ones that's the other backup commander, which is Yuna Grand Summoner. 1 in Bant, so again, green, white, blue, for a 1/5 human cleric with the ability Grand Summon. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you cast your next creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. And whenever another permanent you control is put into the graveyard from anywhere, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. So that there is like our two, titular characters. But there's the rest of her guardians, and it is commented on several times in the game that, she has so many guardians, but that's because she says, I only travel with the amount of people I know I can trust. So I'm going to go through this in technically the order we meet them in. Chronologically, the first one we meet is Orin because he shows up in the tutorial. So here he is Orin, Venerated Guardian, 3 and a white, for a 2/5 human spirit warrior. That whole spirit thing is a bit of a spoiler for the end of the game. He has Vigilance and the ability Shooting Star. Whenever he attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When you do, exile target creature defending player controls with power less than Orin's power till Orin leaves the battlefield. I'm actually building this deck on the side because the one that's in here is a full art one that I pulled from the little package of here's a sample of what you could find in the special packs. I'm actually running both of the cards that were in there because they were both in the deck, and this one was just full art. The other one is a full art foil. I'll get to that when I talk about some of the other characters. Next up, we have Riku. We don't know she's Riku until we get to the Moonflow. Past the Moonflow, technically. But chronologically, she is the second one we meet. So Riku, Resourceful Guardian, is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human artificer. And whenever one or more counters, whenever you put one or more counters on a creature, till end of turn, that creature can't be blocked by creatures your opponents control. And she has Steel. For 1 and tap, you can move a counter from target creature an opponent controls onto target creature you control, activate only as a sorcery. So that's cool. Next one we meet is Waka, the Devoted Guardian, because we wash up on the beach of Besaid, and he leads us back to the island village. So here he's 2 green and a white for a 4/4 human warrior with reach and trample. Reach makes sense because he's a ranged fighter with a blitzball. Whenever Waka deals combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target artifact that player controls, and put a +1/+1 counter on Waka. This makes sense because he is very much not a fan of the Obed and the fact that they use Machina because, his brother went off to war, used a Machina weapon instead of the sword he got him, and died fighting Sin, which is, technically supposed to be the big bad, but you find out throughout the game that actually the big bad lives inside of Sin, which is why Sin continually comes back. But anyway, he has the ability Blitzball Captain at the beginning of your end step. If a counter was put on Waka this turn, put a counter on each other creature you control. Because he's a good captain. Next we have Lulu, Stern Guardian. Of all of them, I think this is the one I'm the least into the design of, but she's 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. Whenever an opponent attacks you, choose target creature attacking you, put a stun counter on that creature, and you can pay 3 and a blue to proliferate. So, mechanically, cool, she fits with the deck. But, she's the party's black mage. I feel like they should have done something a little more with that. You know what I mean? Alright, last up, we have Kamari, the Valiant Guardian. And here it's really leaning into the fact that he's a blue mage. 2, a green and a blue for a 3/3 cat warrior with vigilance. And then Ronso's Rage. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Kamari and tap target creature an opponent controls. Then you can have Kamari become a copy of that creature, except its name is Kamari Valiant Guardian, and it has vigilance and this ability. So, similar because in the game he could steal monsters' abilities and then use them as his overdrive. Regardless, I'm running out of time because I'm approaching half an hour already. A few things I want to touch on. First up, the Spear Grid is the main way you power up in the game. You get AP that allows you to move across the board. You get spheres that allow you to fill in the board. The card is 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1 counter on that creature. And then it has unlockability. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have reach and trample. Now, the other card that I pulled from that little sample pack is the Chocobo Knights, which is a foil, full art, 3 and a white for a 3/3 human knight. Whenever you attack, creature you control with counters on them gain double strike till end of turn. This is the Chocobo Knights that you run into continually across Spira until after Operation Mihen, when the Crusaders and the Chocobo Knights need to rebuild their orders. It wouldn't be Final Fantasy X without your mini bad guy, and that is Maester Seymour. 2 and a green for a 1/3 human elf cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to Maester Seymour's power on another creature you control, and you can pay 3 green for Monstrosity X, where X is the number of counters among creatures you control. Next up, we have Shalinda. You have an Acolyte. You run into her a couple of times throughout the game. Here, she is a green and a white for a 2/2 human cleric with lifelink. And whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature if its power is less than Shalinda's power. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on Shalinda. I feel like there's something fun you could do with her, and either going wide with tokens, or a thing that, when a creature enters, you can put a counter on a thing, because I know there's that green elf that does that with green creatures, so you could, get the best of both worlds. You could continually make her power greater, so that your other things come in with counters. Next up, we have Gata and Luzu, which is 2 and a white for a 1/1 human soldier with flash. When it enters, choose target creature you control. If damage will be dealt to that creature this turn, prevent that damage, put that many counters on it. these are notable because depending on choices that you make in the game, one of them dies. Like, you cannot prevent it, but you can essentially influence which one of them dies, which sounds horrible, but yeah. Oh, and we've reached the end. I have one more card I want to talk about, and that is Owaka, the 23rd, or otherwise known here as Owaka, Traveling Merchant. He follows the party around because technically he's trying to start his business, but actually he wants to support Yuna on her journey because his sister was a summoner who died on her journey. So here he is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 human citizen. You can tap him to remove a counter from a non-land permanent you control and draw a card. Now, I don't really want to get into too much more because I'm already past the half an hour mark and I've been recording for over an hour. It's sweltering in this room right now. So I'm just going to say thank you for listening to my TED Talk, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulvey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.